early afternoon for our East Coasters. We're really excited to have you all here for Nailing the Art of Sales, Coaching Reps to Success with Emotional Intelligence. It's early for Pacific time, I guess not if you're a seller. So we're really, really stoked to see you here. If you are not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, we are hosting this event today, and we are, in our opinion, the world's largest revenue leadership community for all those in sales, revenue, all the supporting disciplines. And our mission is to create an environment for our 20,000 and constantly growing members to answer questions they might struggle to answer on their own. And we do that through great live sessions like the one you're going to see today. It's going to be full of energy. It's going to get you really excited for your Friday. And of course, this would not be possible without our sponsor, which is Outplay. So David, I'm going to pass it to you to say a couple of words on Outplay really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so very much, Taylor. Ultimately, what we at Outplay want to do is help you personalize and enable your approach to sequencing and communicating and connecting with your prospects. In a nutshell, we want to help you communicate and connect better through an omni-channel approach. And we do that through the platform called Outplay. So if you have questions about it, feel free to hit me up or hit us up. Look us up online, Google, LinkedIn, you name it, you'll find us. But it's outplayhq.com. And we're here to help you connect more.
Awesome. Amazing. So a couple of housekeeping notes for today before I go backstage, and you don't have to see me anymore, but you get to see the three lovely people on this stage. Yes, of course, this is being recorded. We know you're going to want access to this content all the time because it's going to be that amazing, and you're going to want to share it. We will send you the recording right after the session is done. And please be interactive with the folks here. These are brilliant minds. You want to ask them questions. We have Goldcast so that you can chat with everyone. You can use emojis. You can comment. I see people in the chat. We see Christy. We see Alan. And we're really excited to have you here. So don't forget to use the Q&A. Don't forget to use the chat and be really interactive. And now I'm going to pass it over to the wonderful Sean to do a little introduction of himself and the folks on this call. Bye, folks.
Thanks, Taylor. Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Cardenas. I'll be the moderator today. I'm the senior AE and team lead over here at Atrium. Before too much about me, I'd love to actually pass it off to Andrew, and his name is David Youngblood, goes by Youngblood or YB for anybody out there in the chat. And so Andrew, would love to pass it off to you first. Tell a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to everyone.
For sure. Thanks, Sean. Super excited to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew Morton. I am, from a role standpoint, I am the vice president of sales at a company called UserVoice. We help product teams leverage feedback to build incredible products. We're talking about EQ today, so who am I? Thank you, YB, for the inspiration on this one. I am a dad. I'm a part-time adventurer. Love to be outside. Love to live in the woods. If you've seen some weird guy in a flannel like walking around in a national park, that's probably me. So apologies if I scared you or you confused me for Bigfoot. Coffee snob. I am obsessed with good coffee. It's okay to say that. My wife calls me a coffee snob all the time. My favorite thing, I'm a dad. I've got 4 incredible kids. So yes, it's a lot, hence the gray hair. But no, I'm all about being a dad. It is far and away the best thing about my life. And I think has probably helped me the most in terms of emotional intelligence, EQ, and probably my patience. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. David, pass it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take that speaking stick there, Andrew. Definitely appreciate it. Thanks for the intros as well, Sean. Hello, world. Hello, Modern Sales Pros community. And hello, anyone else just tuning in. As it applies to me coming here and being here today, I'm definitely humbled and grateful to be here. I too am a father. Love the fact that I'm a father. We have my wife and I have 2 amazing children, a son and a daughter, 11 and 9, and it's a wonderful, amazing, and creative, imaginative age. We're very happy about. In addition to being a father and a husband, I'm also a student. I'm also a teacher. I'm also a pursuer of perspective and understanding perspective and what it means and what that means to EQ in the topic today, right? So we'll get more on that in a minute. But in addition to that, I'm also a sales professional, partner sales manager here at Outplay. I am a lot of things, but more than any on all of that, I'm just happy to be here and be a part of this wonderful experience today that we all get to have together. So back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Youngblood. Appreciate it. I am incredibly excited to have these two talk today about nailing the art of sales and coaching reps to success with emotional intelligence. I personally feel like this is something that's should be more top of mind, especially in a completely remote world or a hybrid world of just understanding that better connection with reps and that effective coaching standpoint. So when you think about just like sales mastery and what we're talking about, nailing the art and science, it's really like, because of today's like the accessibility of data and understanding, more now, hey, it takes X amount of calls or it takes X amount of emails right now to actually hit your bookings. A lot of it actually of that emotional EQ of coaching level and understanding the art of actually selling kind of goes out the window. So I love that we're actually bringing a little bit of that attention back, because even though we have so much more accessibility to data, we should always have a little bit of that art piece to things. So without further ado, going into a little bit more of the questions itself here. And then I think, am I in charge of the slides? No, I'm not in charge of the slides. Okay, we'll go into the first question here. So I would love to hear, perfect, there we go. So first topic, and Youngblood, I'm going to pass the first one off to you here, is the art and science of selling and the difference and importance of both. Would love to hear a little bit of your perspective on this, and then Andrew will get into your perspective as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as an artist and also a student, as I have already identified myself, so great topic, appreciate the tee up. It's like we might have prepared for this or something. Hint, but no, just kidding. So art and science of selling. So science of selling to me is like system and process, right? Science is the structure, the rigidity, the parameters of it all, right? They're the things that are the templates that you can templatize, copy, paste, clone, tailor, tweak, and make your own a little bit. The art of sales, as it applies to this, is the intuition, the senses of a sales professional, typically acquired by wisdom through trial and error and experience, and always be testing, as one of my great mentors has taught me. Always be testing and validating. Are you doing it the right way this time? That comes more from the art, but the two are also part of the whole, right? You have to have both. You can't have one without the other. We've heard these things before. So as it applies to art and science and our topic today, I feel like as a sales community, as modern sales professionals today, we've gotten a great grasp of the science of things, and we've been craving the art of it, all of us, and we've been misinterpreting the messages we've been receiving about the art. And so that's part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing today, is to help better interpret the art a different way. So maybe some of you can take it and apply it and better your lives ultimately. Back to you, Sean.
I love that. Andrew, excited for you to talk a little bit about the war of art, because you forced me to actually download this on Audible now. That's all great. So would love your perspective on this topic here and what it is that you have to share.
Yeah, 100%. Well, first I have to, David, I couldn't agree more with you. Like, I love what you said about, I sort of see this as, the science of selling is the framework to carry the conversation and drive the deal forward. And the art is moving it to that outcome, right? So we know what we need to do. We know where we need to go. The EQ comes into play because it's all about like actually building trust and building rapport and guiding that deal forward. The War of Art. Incredible book. Stephen Pressfield wrote this book years and years and years ago. It's been floating around for a while. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. It's incredible. But it was the first thing I thought of when I actually read this question. We started talking about this topic. To me, it speaks to the duality of a sales role, right? There's all this, as David talked about, like, what are my KPIs? How many dials to demos do I have to do? But it's actually about the practice and the work. So Stephen Pressfield, again, War of Art, talks a lot about like, hey, my success comes from showing up every day and doing the work, doing the practice. Regardless of the outcome, I'm going to hone these skills, and I'm going to make sure that I've got this understanding fundamentally of like my toolkit is built by the practice of this work. So like when I think about how that translates to, I don't know, sales outcomes in particular, like maybe we talk about objections here, right? Like, so what's the biggest challenge with an objection? It's fear, right? It's this fear of like, I'm afraid of how my response is going to be interpreted, of getting a no, those types of things. And I think the practice really helps to improve those outcomes. So how do you improve that, right? How do you get more comfortable with objections, with delivering pricing? Well, you practice that, you repeat it, right? You go through your common objections, you utilize your framework, and you do it every day and show up and show up and show up. And that helps to give that confidence. It helps to build out that emotional sort of structure, that emotional confidence that you're looking for. So they're so interdependent. But really, I think they're really intertwined, and we shouldn't look at them necessarily in isolation, but how do they blend together? How do they come together and help us be better salespeople?
I love that. I want to stick on this topic for a little bit here, because I think that the art of selling is something that, with technology and more people just going inbound and going through the automated process of buying something, that the art is actually kind of going away a little bit. I'm a little bit of an old soul, and so I've read like the Zig Ziglar books of the past and the Sandler books of the past, right? But that has kind of like gone away with more modern selling, like coaching. So Andrew, I'm going to pass back to you, and then Youngblood back to you, of like, what would you say to like that art piece of selling? And like, maybe like, what are some material that you pull from when you do your sales coaching that still like adds that like impact of like art? Do you mind sharing, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think, to your point, Sean, like the KPIs, like, you know, the pacing stuff, that's all really important, right? Like if we've got the transparency and the visibility on like, hey, this is how many calls I need to make to book a meeting. Like, yeah, cool. Let's leverage that. Let's utilize the technology. But I think ultimately what I've seen throughout my sales career is that people inevitably buy from individuals that they trust, that they have confidence in, that they have a rapport with, right? And so I think sales in sort of this like sterilized, like, hey, it goes from discovery to demo to this process, and it's all just like metric driven and conversion and automation. I don't think that that's helpful to buyers necessarily. So when I think about, again, materials and stuff I'm sharing and referencing to build that out, a lot of that is actually like, I'll get into more of this later, but a lot of this is like sort of having reps recognize how they are delivering their conversations, like sort of watching and interpreting and talking about how that makes them feel. Always the war of art is a reference, right? Like how do we blend the two and get duality between the two? So there's a couple of different go-to resources there. I think that kind of covers it. I don't know, YB, what would you add to that?
As it applies to the war of art, or specifically kind of digging back into art of science of selling as a topic?
Back into the art of science of selling.
Yeah, art of science of selling as a topic. So my takeaway, I was taking some notes too, and I wasn't trying not to pay attention, but you raised some good points that were a little off my original topics, and I wanted to drill down on them. And I think one of the things that we've as a sales community, as a professional community, have done to get a little more abstract and philosophical about it, is we have lost a touch in a way with the EQ of everything, and as it relates to having a conversation with another human being. And so ultimately what we're talking about when we say topics like webinars with the art of science of selling, what we're really saying is we want to communicate and connect better. Ultimately, we wanted to communicate at scale, right? So we created marketing automation. Beautiful. We wanted to create at scale and still personalize, because we still wanted that human connection. So we created, as a collective society and business community, sales engagement platforms, because we had a sense collectively that we wanted to connect on a more personal level, but also appreciated the value of scaling those efforts, right? And it's really the whole process is finding that balance between the two, of scale and personalization. And it's where science and art merge, and where do you draw the lines? And those lines they're on a spectrum. They're not the same for everyone, and we forget that. We would like try to copy paste repeat this crap all day sorry if I can't say crap, but I did it again. You're welcome, and I'm sorry. But so that's really the crux of the problem, right? So when we're talking about the art and the science, it's not just art and the science, it's the art and or the science as those apply to you making the sale. Mic drop for a second. I'm back to you,
nice,
John.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for sharing that. I'm going to try to be a good moderator today and keep on track with time here. So I want to go to the next question for you guys here.
Good luck.
This one's great. What does effective coaching look like? And then how is it actually measured for each of you? So Youngblood, we'll start with you, and then Andrew, you can add in afterwards.
Yeah. So effective coaching. So first off, the question I feel is there's a problem with the question. And for me, that question is, and just as a way of framing it, what does effective coaching look like? By whose standards, right? So first you got to understand and apply that you have to look at effective coaching for your use case, and the use case is important as that relates to your outcomes. Once you understand that first, then you come back and say, okay, what are the KPIs that relate to this role? That's a little too cerebral. So to the point as it relates to sales in the B2B SaaS community, the typical KPIs, this is the science, right, that we tend to go to. And the problem is effective coaching has historically missed the sales. The good news is we as a community have started to evolve in a way, and we're sensing that as well. And so other tools and technologies are coming out there, many of which are a part of this community. Some may even be on this call that are helping us become more in tune with the EQ of ourselves. And so when we talk about EQ, we need to understand what that really is. So effective coaching means I am speaking to not just the KPIs of a teammate or team member, associate, peer, or superior in a 360 feedback environment, which should exist. But I'm also speaking to the individual as a person, as a human, as a father, as a husband, you have to take into consideration. You cannot pretend like they're not a human being. And so many times we do that. We take the humanity out of coaching. That's my 2 cents. To you, Andrew?
No, that's beautifully articulated. Sorry, Sean, anything to add to that?
No, that's totally fine. I was just going to say, yes, like I see it in my own experience. I'm going to want you guys to elaborate a little bit more on your own, but like you see just reps and individuals as chess pieces or checker pieces even. And it's like, no, this is what my task is today. I have to have this one-on-one. I have to have this performance review. And we forget to add a little bit of that. So Youngblood, I love how you just added that into it. Andrew, do you have anything that you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love what you said there, dude, about the sort of the nuance, the individualism of coaching, right? When I think about coaching my reps, like it's very nuanced, it's very individualistic. One of the biggest things I think that has really changed my perception is this perspective that like, what outcomes are we coaching for? Well, we're not just coaching for outcomes related to the business. That individual rep, that individual salesperson has goals and targets and things on a professional and a personal level that they want to achieve. So when I'm doing my coaching, and apologies if I'm getting too granular here, but I want to give some tactical takeaways from this. Like when I'm doing my coaching, our on an individual rep level, we've got, again, look, we have quotas, we have targets, we're in sales, that's always going to exist, that's what we do, right? We drive new revenue into the business. But what does the rep, the AE, the SDR want to get out of this role? What are they trying to achieve, right? And it's really interesting because when you have these conversations, like I think what I would encourage people to do is really to drive that with your reps. So like giving an example, like a lot of times people will come in and say, like, I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to go with your career, right? And they're like, oh, I want to be in management. And it's like, cool, that's great. Why? What about management do you like? What do you want to do in management? Why is that your ultimate path? And what's come out of that is like, I've had individual people that are like, well, actually, I don't really want to do that. I just money. And then you've got other people that are like, I like coaching, I like teaching, I like education. And so the coaching pathways for those two people are completely different, right? How do I help this person over here maximize their earnings, right? As much as possible, make as much money as possible. And this person over here, how do I develop them, put them on a leadership track, right? So for me, coaching in itself is not a scalable thing, right? It's very individualistic. And the most important thing that we can do as sales leaders is spend time focused on this stuff, right? Building out mutual plans, mutual understanding, and getting our reps guided towards that.
Absolutely. Youngblood, I see you. You are just like itching to comment on something right there. Come on.
Yes. Andrew, man, you said so many awesome and great things, and I love your contributions. So those are great. And also, the only thing I would challenge about that, and I like the other things that you brought in as far as tailoring and personalizing the coaching experience to the recipient, right? If that recipient's passions and purposes are not money-based, then quit throwing more money at them, neighbors, right? Like understand that they want to grow with a company. They want stock options, or maybe they don't want any of that. Maybe they just want a really cool culture and they want to contribute and be a part of the growth and development of a beautiful culture in a company. Anyway, TLDR, Andrew's right on that, but my note is the one thing I object to, y'all are cracking up, I love it, is you said coaching isn't scalable, and that I challenge as an idea, because if you look at it binarily like that, as a binary view, is it or isn't it, then we limit our capacity for growing and evolving as a community to improve our process. What I reinterpreted that as in my notes was, it's challenging to scale coaching because it's hard to, on all ends, from coach to coachee, right, or student, teacher to student. Sometimes it's hard for the two parties or more to understand the origin points of perspective for all the other sides, right? Knowing the real facets of the other self. So that's what I really see that you're talking about. But what if we had a better way? And that's just, I want to plant that seed out there. What if we had a better way to get to know and communicate with and interact with our team?
So
My 2 cents.
Let me clarify on that comment, because you're right? Like if you have the appropriate framework, coaching should be scalable. Yeah, right. You nailed that down. So like if you can ask that set of questions and you can have a framework for helping your reps achieve that, you can absolutely scale that across the team, right? Those practices, those fundamentals of like calling that out and helping identify like what is important, what's not, and then how do we drive towards those things. Those, to your point, David, like the science behind that, that's absolutely scalable. I think my intention here is that like coaching on an individual level in a lot of ways should look different between the reps in terms of what the outcomes that you're trying to work for and where people are going to need practice and ultimately their delivery, right? And I think like, again, to your point, David, like what is the motivator? Like if you're encouraged to go on a leadership trajectory and I'm trying to throw money at you, it's just never going to work. So I need to understand who you are as a person and what's important to you. And so I guess from that perspective, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is like, those should be different. But yes, absolutely. If you get a good framework to do that, you can apply it across an entire organization.
So I say yes to framework, but framework is that science piece. And in addition to the science piece, we also have to fully understand ourselves as leaders, right? We have to have self-awareness ourselves. We got to have our own IQ if we expect others to have it, right? So look in the mirror. And then, and in addition to that, understand, I'm just using 2 different objects I'm holding, whatever. Then we also understand, I don't care, it's a pen and a hand, whatever. Then the other person has to also understand who they are. They have to have self-awareness. And then the two have to have a combined, shared sense of awareness before they engage in that real conversation. Conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
I love what you guys were saying about like the person is bigger than just the quota, essentially, is like what I took from that. Like when I managed the team, I had this tip from one of my mentors of you can't just have robots that are like, okay, I'm just going to hit this number today. It's always the why. So what I actually did, everyone beginning of the month, beginning of the quarter, they had what it was that they wanted to get with their commission checks, for example, or what they wanted to get by getting to a certain goal on the sales team. And it's like, that's what we were always striving for. So we took the number out of it and it's like, no, you're trying to get to that vacation that you wanted, or no, you needed to hit this so you can actually be part of this like leadership retreat or something like that. So I really love it. I would like to flip it a little bit here on this example and have you guys share when you've seen ineffective coaching and like what that looks like for you guys.
Question. I'm good with the flip, but before we get to a flip, are there any questions out there on anything we've covered thus far? Just checking in.
Might have a lot of West Coasters right now.
Okay. Cool. No worries. That's all right. I just wanted to check in. That's also
I like
asking you that. Now they all just heard me ask for that, so now they're like, "Oh, maybe I should ask a question."
They did. That was good.
Yeah.
I like it. So, Youngblood, we'll start with you. What is, and then we can exclude names, exclude companies, right?
Ooh, I know what this looks like. I did this.
Sure.
Yeah. So what it looks like, sorry, people started to talk and I got excited and distracted because I'm ADD AF, y'all. So if ineffective coaching for me looks like essentially the antithesis of what we just covered in the last question, to be honest. These two go hand in hand. And basically what I used to do as a coach is I would look at the KPIs, I would look at the metrics, I would run the numbers, and I would stack rank, sort rank my team of X number of employees and team members, and I would say bottom 20%, Pareto principle, apply the numbers, apply the formulas, apply the science, all day long. My bosses didn't care, I didn't care, but my team cared, right? And my team felt it. And what did that do over time? And this was a role of mine in another life, in another company, in another industry. The team that I had, like, it created a negative culture, right? I was a jerk to them. But I was taking them out. I was doing all these other great culture things that I thought were awesome culture deposits into their emotional piggy bank, so to speak, right? I thought I had EQ, but I was lying because I was templatizing that part of my process too. That was so stupid. So that's
Yeah.
what ineffective coaching looks like, is actually coaching as a tool is a piece of it all. But if you don't have the right atmosphere and environment
Totally.
for a good coaching and situation, then WTF, there's no real point, right?
Real quick before Andrew, you comment on that, Youngblood, what was the trigger that told you that was bad?
How did I come to the realization that it wasn't good?
Yeah.
I didn't in that time. I learned that years later, looking back, unfortunately. So heed my warning, learn from my mistakes, all ye would be and/or are leadership out there.
Yeah.
Don't repeat my mistakes, please. And if you do, learn it more quickly than I did.
I love that. Andrew, what about for yourself? Like, what does that ineffective coaching look like, or what did it look like for you?
So I'll give it to you from a different perspective, because I've definitely worked in organizations where I've seen that, and it's like very much like, you're blending performance reviews with pipeline reviews. It's a big no-no for me. And you're just talking about like, hey, how many dials did you make? How many emails did you send? Cool, you did it. Great, go on and keep doing it. No, you didn't. You're out of the organization. Like, that just is such an inappropriate way to do those things.
Yeah.
I think where I see it the most, and maybe this will be a good lesson to share with other leaders, is like I see it very much materialize in like new sales leaders, right? So kind of to your point, David, it's like there's sort of this perception of like they come in and they're like, okay, everything that got me here is what I need to teach all these reps how to do, right? So it's like, look, guys, you just have to copy and replicate my framework and do exactly as I did, and if you're not doing it, you're wrong. I've seen that very often in my career materialize through people that were phenomenal sales reps, and then they make that transition to like, okay, now I've got to lead people and learn like what motivates people and how to get them, because everybody works differently. Everybody has their different executions, and very often, unfortunately, you'll see that like, I think the biggest indicator is churn on those teams, right? People are like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. This isn't aligned with my values. I don't feel motivated, and they resign or they quit, right? So I think it's a really important thing to pay attention to, where you're like, look, I'm going to put a new leader in a position, and I have to get them to, a lot of the times one of the first things I'll say to them is like, listen, go spend the next 30 days just listening to everybody on the team in the organization. Don't make any decisions. Don't take any action. Just hear what they're saying. And not only will you build better rapport and better empathy with those people, but you'll actually get a better perspective on what's going on in the business. And you'll understand that, again, everybody has a different view and a different perspective. And what you need to address on an individual level is just dramatically different from person to person. So a little bit of a different perspective, but it's where I see it materialize the most within organizations.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great segue into the next section there, Youngblood, if that's okay with you, actually, is like how to personalize that coaching approach. Because Andrew, I even felt victim of this too at one point of like, I just want to replicate what my old manager did for me, right? Yeah. And that wasn't factoring in all those variables that you just mentioned there. Youngblood, did you have anything to comment on that? I'd love to talk on this topic here.
Yeah. So I'm good. You're asking if we can move to this topic and get off the last one. I'm good with that.
Or if you want to something too, I don't want to cut you off if you had a great thought.
It's all right. I already let it go. It's gone.
Cool.
So how to personalize your coaching approach? It's not a one size fits all. How to personalize it? Really, again, I see the word personalize and I see coaching approach, and my brain just pulls those off the screen. And I think about it. And if I'm going to personalize the coaching approach, what that means to me is being able to tailor and personalize it in a way that I'm recognizing and giving agency to the facets of the team member or associate, right? Peer, colleague, or superior, and respecting the other facets of the other person. And this breaches into a lot of other topics that we talk about in the world today, right? And I'll let y'all connect those dots. But how to personalize your coaching approach implies being able to have the capacity, willingness, and know-how to apply that know-how in a way to connect with your team member. In terms of the tactical, because I'm in a bit more of a cerebral and or philosophical state today, as you can tell. I'll leave that to Andrew because he's been articulating that side of things very well. But yeah, ultimately, I want the right atmosphere. I want the right people that are in the right mindset and mentality. And if those parts of the recipe are there, then we have a good starting point to engage in that conversation, right? My 2 cents.
I love that.
Andrew.
Andrew, I love your 2 cents. And then Christy West, I see your chat, and I think that's great. Andrew, I'll let you do your thought, and then I'd love to actually, Youngblood, have you answer that one. But Andrew, you first. How to personalize your coaching approach?
Yeah. Is it cool if I saw Christy's comment come in, and I kind of been thinking about the approach. Cool to if I think because that's a good response within this.
It's your show.
Yeah, I like it.
Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah. So Christy, I think that there's some structure to this, like the way that I do this, right? And then there are some semantics to it. So for the group, for anybody who's caught it, Christy's question, like thoughts on doing coaching sessions separate from one-to-ones. Are you okay to coach whenever appropriate? So yes. So I again, just to give some tactical experience, the way that I like to execute this, I do a weekly one-on-one with my sales team, right? Individually, everybody gets a one-on-one. We spend about an hour. It's not focused on pipeline coverage. It's focused on like, where are your concerns with your performance? How are you doing and feeling? What's going on in your life that like I can help with, whether it's personal or professional? And it's where we mutually set goals, right? It's a great opportunity. It's open communication, but it's a great opportunity to sync with your reps and understand like where they are, where their head's at, what their motivators are. So we'll talk stuff like goals. We'll talk stuff like open format, right? And I basically say to them, like, I'm going to ask you the same 3 or 4 questions every week. Come to the table with whatever you want to talk about. This is your time. So a lot of times what will end up happening, Christy, to answer your question specifically, is like, they may say like, hey, I'm having a really tough time like handling these objections. And I'm like, cool, that's a place to explore it. I'm like, talk me through that. What's giving you hesitation? Where do you find challenges? And based on that conversation, then oftentimes what will happen is like, we're setting up subsequent training sessions to go through that and work through it to a point where it's like I oftentimes I'm like, if I need to sit with you and work with you for the next 8 weeks on this, we'll do it, right? Because that's the best contribution I can make to the organization. So I'll set separate time. We'll go through those. I also think it depends on your rep's learning style. So again, as an example, I have a couple of reps on my team that tended to respond really, really well to like tactical coaching on calls. So they may come in and say like, hey, I need to improve my skill set. I feel really uncomfortable. And like, we'll sit down and we'll watch a call together and we'll go through it and spend that time to say like, hey, here's what went well, here's what didn't. So I think it's making space for those specific objectives, Christy, like, and it kind of goes into that. There was an earlier question about, how do I help to coach EQ? One of my favorite ways to do that is sit down with a rep and watch a video recording of a call, right? Like, because you can feel the responsiveness, like, okay, where did I listen? Where did I talk too much? Where did I ask the right questions? Right? Like, it's a great opportunity to review. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. I spend time every week doing it with each of my AEs. But yeah, I mean, again, to kind of circle back on that question, Christy, like, define the problems, and maybe the one-on-one is that space for it if it's appropriate with the rep, but then we need to spend time afterwards, like with dedicated time, working through that problem with them and trying to help them improve. So I hope that answers your question, gives you some tactical execution off of it.
I think that was a great response. Youngblood, love to hear yours as well.
Yeah. That was awesome. It's challenging to add anything to that, but being me and who I am, I'm going to try. I love challenges. So one thing that popped out in that, and a nugget of what Andrew shared that I liked a lot was, and I paraphrase it into my thoughts, right? In my thoughts, I said coaching as it applies to ... And what I'm thinking about is coaching as it applies to learning styles. So if you want to truly tailor and personalize coaching, another facet, another thing worth considering and putting into your science and your layout, your formula, right, or your workflow, whatever your word for that is to templatize and standardize your system and process or standard operating procedures. Add to it the notion that your teammates may learn differently. I'm ADD AF, as I've already discussed, right? I'm a kinesthetic learner. What that means is I learn by doing, right? I don't learn by filling out forms. I don't learn by updating my CRM. Sorry, boss. I don't learn by doing these other things, right? I learn by doing. The act of selling is how I've learned to sell. And so as you're coaching them, be mindful of, right? I'm not to say that you have to over personalize every aspect and facet of it. That's stupid. That's not scalable. That's too far to the other extreme. But do take into consideration and weight your communication styles, right? Do a disc assessment, do a Colby, do whatever version of that works well for you and for the team, so you can learn how to better interoperate as a team. That's my 2 cents.
I love that. Quick question for you guys before we go on to the next one here. So let's just say that you're a sales leader and maybe you're a little bit more of an introvert. That's your comfort level, right? And personalizing things is not something that comes secondhand with as opposed to other leaders. What would be like some advice that you would give to maybe someone that's a little bit more in their shell, but they're a sales leader that wants to create that good culture of like how they can start to do more of this personalized coaching? Youngblood, start with you and then Andrew.
Yeah, my short answer, and yes, I do have those as well, is do that DISC, Colby, or whatever assessment so you can better understand your own communication styles. Because even as an introvert, my wife is an amazing introvert, but also formerly a high school English teacher and had to teach classrooms of students and manage them. So she had to become a communicator, right?
Yeah.
And that was not her comfort zone.
Right.
And the best way that the school system helped prepare her in her certifications and process was to do some type of a personality profile test so she could learn what tools or techniques come more natural to her communication style, right? It's not that you have to copy Andrew's 101 to coaching as an EQ sales manager, right? Andrew's version of that is an example or model that you can model and templatize after, so then you can tailor it and make it your own and apply your techniques and strengths to it. I'll give you a nickel on that one. And that was my shortest answer so far. So you're welcome. Andrew?
It's an interesting question because I categorize myself as an introvert. Like I'm a very introverted person. And actually I think that's helped me with, I don't know if my sales team actually joined in this call. I hope they won't mind me saying, but they're all introverted. Like I have a team full of introverts, and it's been cool because I am actually, I think in a lot of ways better to empathize with the other introverts that exist on my team, right? I can understand how they feel and what's going on and like why certain situations are awkward or challenging or can be difficult. So I think there's 2 parts to it. I think David made a great point about like, understanding like which channels you're comfortable communicating in, right? And setting that expectation with your team, right? Like, hey, I need to communicate one-to-one. I'm more comfortable if we do this via Slack than, an actual call. At the same time, though, I think you have to respect that from your team as well, right? Like, again, if you're dealing with a team of sales reps that are also introverted, which can be, again, incredible people, incredible salespeople, it's not indicative of sales success. Yeah. You have to understand and empathize with their communication styles, right? And I think oftentimes like, which can be a little bit difficult for me, but you have to challenge them a little bit to come out of the shell. But really, to David's point, like it's about creating open channels for communication where you both are comfortable. So it's why I'm so big on one-to-ones, because it's just me and this other person in a room, right? Yeah. And it's just like, there's no agenda, there's no expected outcome. We're just, building a rapport with each other, and what comes out of that will come out of that, right? So creating those opportunities for communication that you both are comfortable with is critical.
I think that's awesome. Thank you, guys. I'd love to go on to the next section that we have here. Next question for you guys, which is, this is great, actually. It's tips to improve the emotional intelligence of your sales reps for successful sales calls. So Andrew, I'll let you kind of kick us off on this topic right here, but yeah, please provide us with your knowledge, your great tips here.
Hopefully they will categorize all of those, Sean. For me, I think it starts with teaching the team. It depends, right? Everybody's going to be different, but a lot of the time it's really about creating good active listeners, right? And I think actually that fundamentally starts on the rep level with helping your reps understand okay, how do I become a good listener, right? And how do I like start to take notes, and how do I not think about driving the conversation to where I want to go? So there's two things that I will generally work on. One is a really good, like particularly in the discovery call, a really good discovery framework, right? I want a pathway for the reps so they don't have to think about like, oh God, what do I have to ask next? What's going to come out of this? Like, they can just say like, look, I can listen, I can be engaged in the conversation, I can digest the response, and then I can say, cool, I've got a quick question to move to next, right? This is kind of the information. And we've even simplified that a lot. Like we built out a discovery kind of checklist. Like, what are the things that we should know and understand about the customer? I also think that I would, again, and this is a little bit tactical, but the research ahead of a call with a prospect, right? Who are they? What do they do? What do they like? How does their business make money? What does their customer look like? When you show up to a call and your reps are like, cool, I have no idea what you do. And like, you get into all this sort of ancillary information that they have to now, like, they have to get up to speed on who the customer is and what they do and all this other stuff. And it's like, you can circumvent that and show up to a call and really feel like you can build trust with somebody if you know, like, hey, fundamentally, I know how you guys like make money, what your product is, what you do. I know that you're an adventurer and you like coffee. Cool. Like, you're starting to build that relationship already. Yep. So for me, research ahead of calls is critical. And then we've worked a lot on note taking. As maybe as absurd as that sounds, like one of the problems that I found with the reps in terms of like active listening is they're like, how do I capture all this information? And it's like, okay, cool. Well, do you need to review a call recording? Do you like to write notes down? Like, I can't use any note-taking app. I have to write all the time because otherwise I'll forget it. So it's like, let's actually figure out the best way for you to capture information from this call so you can be really intent and really engaged and really listening. Last piece of advice, and then I'll shut up, is I love to do call review recordings. Like I mentioned a minute ago, like I'll sit down and again, spend an hour and a half with the rep. We watch the call recording from beginning to start. And it really, I think, helps the rep to understand not only like tactically what can they improve in the sales process, but a lot of those times where the rep is just like, hey, I've spoken too much. I've been speaking for 5 minutes and I haven't asked a question, or I haven't just shut up and listened. Like, it becomes very apparent. And I think that actually materializes in better results. And you see that improvement as you watch future call recordings. And it's something you can call out and been like, hey, dude, maybe you should have listened here as opposed to talking, right? So it's a great way. I love doing it. And the reps have responded. My guys have responded well to it. I don't know if it's for everybody, but it seems to work really well for me. So
that was all really great. I love that first part too, like active listening. And it's not just a checklist. Like, we all provide like checklists of like, here's your discovery questions, but you have to have some artistic flair and know when there's times to pivot and maybe expand or maybe just skip over. I love that piece there, Andrew. Youngblood, what about you? I'd love to hear some tips that you have.
Yeah, as it pertains to improving or working towards improving, the very, 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 very first step is making sure that you have an atmosphere and environment that is going to be receptive of that and or draw or almost entice or lure, right? People that think and feel that way. So hiring, right, was what that translates to. Make sure that you're starting with hiring the right people first. And it sounds like Andrew found a way to seems to have found a theme of people that seem to be able to be coachable and in tune with his communication style, right? And that's a beautiful, homogenous environment when an organization can get there. So that's really, really cool. In terms of improving it for your team, if you do those things first, the improving it, if they're already your employee right now, right, you need to ask the right questions to get them to open their mind to shift their paradigms or perspectives, so you can kind of shift their orientation point and get them open to the idea of changing their orientation of perspective, right? They're changing their EQ level, changing where they're at on the EQ spectrum, if you will. What I mean by that is, hey, if they're not willing to have an open conversation with you about what their goals are, what their plans are, or maybe what their budget needs are, or financial aspirations are, right? Like, we have this cool thing we do here at Outplay, again, sponsor, same shameless plug. But here at Outplay, we do this thing called Outplay, a secret Outplayer, and it's this really fun internal cultural thing that's really cool. And what we do is everybody has like a wish list item that other Outplayers can buy them whenever they want to for any reason whatsoever, just as a thank you, like a Secret Santa type thing, right? But it's year round all the time. Then the other side of it is everyone also lists their dream item. So what we get to do as a company is we get to see where everyone's dream. Mine's a trip to India. One of my dream items is I want to go to India, meet a lot of my colleagues and peers, and see what that's all about. And so, as just as that as part of the culture helps open the minds of perspective for the team to be more receptive of coaching as it relates to emotional intelligence. Sorry again, that was a TLDR moment, Sean, and we talked about this before the call.
I know you told me to be aware of that, but I didn't think that it actually was a
Okay. For me, it felt like it might have been.
No,
Anyone's welcome to TMI that or TLDR that if I need to rephrase any of it, repackage it.
No, I thought that was all actually fantastic. And I did want to
Beautiful.
make sure I left a little bit of time because I do want to, audience members, if you're still out there, would love to hear some more of your questions towards the end of the call, especially here. But I thought that was actually a really good segue to talking about the Outplay section right there. Because Andrew, I believe that you have some experience like using Outplay as well. So maybe just wanted to add like a little bit of space of like your experience. So you've used it because you've worked with Youngblood here too. And then we can hopefully get some community members out there to ask us some questions. So Andrew, do you want to kind of take it away?
Yeah, sure. Again, David, plug your ears, but no, my experience with Outplay has been incredible. To be honest with you, it's when we transition tools and we're looking for something that would improve our efficiency and speed us up as a team. Like we kind of, David, I actually don't remember how we found you. I think we got connected through Outbound, right? So it was like,
it was an outbound prospecting. Yeah. Real work was happening. Imagine that.
Yeah, there's no automation there, right? That was all the art of sales, but
grit.
No, I mean, I think what's been great about Outplay, and this is not to minimize the impact of it, but it is very like fundamentally specified to do what it does best, right? Like it's designed to build out or to support the your outbound efforts and to give you structure and actionability around it. And it's been a phenomenal piece of our workflow. So, from my perspective, utilizing it, it's sped us up as a team. It's made our outbound more effective. It's increased our visibility on our performance, right? So we know actually and we've been able to use that information to actually improve our sequencing and redirect some of our efforts. Are we making more calls? Are we making more emails? So ultimately, I couldn't be happier with the product. I know it sounded a bit like a rave reviewer right now, but it's seriously, it's been fantastic. And I think not just from my perspective, but from the team's perspective, right? Like if you were to ask any of the reps on my team, whether they're an SDR or an AE, they have all said the same thing. Like this is ultimately, it's made us more effective. We're more efficient. We're more accountable as a sales team because of these tools. It's been overall a great experience.
That's awesome. Sounds like a great product. I love that.
So when Youngblood Outbound calls you, you should definitely take the call. I would totally recommend it.
I got to get caller ID to update. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, if anything, it's going to lift up your day, right? Like you're going to get a little bit of pep talk, maybe you're going to get a little bit of a laugh. So like, there's no foul in actually picking up the phone. Thank you guys so much. I don't see any questions here from the audience quite yet, but I did want to pass it off, Youngblood, to you to kind of like sum up. Like we've talked about a lot today around the balancing of sale of art and the science of it. So as like the last remark here for you of just like one or two like takeaways.
One or two takeaways. If I can impart anything to any and all of you, the best book you'll ever freaking read. I'm telling you right now, the best book any of you can go read, like today, is the very next book that you pick up and you're able to interpret the message from that author in a way as it relates to that topic and improves your life. Period. That is the most important thing I can say. If I only get one thing to say, one of those books is it applies to modern sales pros, and one of the origins of most of the other authors is spin selling. And what's really cool, and I didn't understand a long time ago, but I've learned now through wisdom, experience, and a lot of headbanging against a wall, is that I've got a lot of other great authors here behind me, and they're all wonderful and amazing. All what I've TLDR'd and TMI'd, condensed their teachings into, is they're all saying the same thing in a different way. And the why for that existence is they're all trying to tell us that we all want to connect and communicate better.
That's
We all
awesome.
want to connect and communicate better. That's it in a nutshell, right?
I love that.
So
You
that's
totally
my summary.
You threw me for a loop there. I really thought I was going to hear a title for the book and saying,
I know, right?
That was cool. But cool.
even better now, the next book you read, you might remember that, and you're like, holy crap, this is the best book I've ever read. And then the next book after that, it's going to be even better, and it's going to be awesome.
Art of Sales.
Yeah.
I love that. Andrew, what about for yourself? 1 or 2 takeaways from today?
So actually, really quickly, can I address a question that's popped up a couple times in here?
Absolutely, yes. And I apologize if I had missed it. Go for it, please.
No, it's cool. She just dropped it back in. Sorry, Katie, I know you'd asked this before, but how to measure the art part, and can it even be quantified? So yes, I believe it can. There's 2 things, again, I'll share personal perspective, but there's 2 things that I look at. Well, first being that I think if you start to improve the EQ, the empathy of your sales team, that will materialize in the performance of their numbers, right? You will see it materialize in conversion rates, on your close won rate, because they're building trust and rapport. So I don't know if you can manage improvement specifically from point A to point B, like how has my EQ grown? But ultimately, I'm very much a firm believer that improved EQ, improved emotional intelligence will actually materialize in better sales results. I've seen that. It's my biggest thing when I come into an organization. I always coach culture first and do a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. And for me, that's been a driver of actual sales results. So I think that that's always a key part. The other thing that I think about is like, okay, how much time am I dedicating to my team? And I actually try to make that, without being interruptive or disruptive to their day. That is the single biggest focus for me, right? So I take a look at like, how much time did I spend coaching, reviewing call recordings, supporting admin or AEs, not admins, AEs on deals, sitting in as much as they need me to, right? I don't want to be a micromanager, and I don't want to sit in and interrupt them where they don't need it. But I gauge my success as a leader based on that time, right? And that's the indication that I'm looking for. So, and I think it's important because, again, you can't necessarily see, progress from like, I'm a 5 in my EQ and now I'm at 10. But I do know that, like, again, that materializes in the amount of time that I'm spending. So if I look at my calendar and I've spent 30 hours in meetings that are not related to my team, I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty poor performance. I need to flip that. And the next 3 weeks need to be in-depth, one-to-one coaching, call recording review, and being intentional about blocking time for that. So that's how I do it. I'll do YB. I don't know if you have any other perspective.
Yeah, I was actually going to type my responses just because of time, and I feel like I said a lot of words today. So, but I'll go ahead and what you said was beautiful, and I just took my thought from there, which was be considerate, lead by example through initial and sustained actions as a leader, right? Simon Sinek teaches this, leaders eat last, all that fun stuff. A lot of great authors out there. And eventually, leadership can and will establish a culture that results in an atmosphere that's more receptive of coaching, training, and utilization and application of an EQ-based sales approach, right? And that is my true TMI version. I recondensed and packaged it, so that was great to type it out.
Thank you, David.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Appreciate that. And then, Andrew, I don't want to steal this from you because Youngblood did his 1 or 2 takeaways, and you did a great response there to Katie's question. Was there 1 or 2 takeaways that you wanted to share before we sign off here today?
Yeah, if there's any final wisdom I can impart, like David said, read a book, read The War of Art. It's incredible. Treat your reps like people, right? Lead by example, show that empathy to them, and it will materialize in their results. But everybody on your team is unique, is an individual, has different motivators, different things that drive them, different problems that they're dealing with. And the more that we can listen to that and understand that as sales leaders, the more we're going to be able to help our team, to empathize with them, to get them to where they want to go, and to ultimately hit our goals, right? So yeah, listen, empathize, treat them as people.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And Taylor, if you're still out there for us, I think that's the wrap on
Yeah.
great wisdom.
I would say just before Taylor jumps in and on it, I just want to personally give a huge shout out and thank you to Sean, who's relatively new to the moderation. Sorry, I'm stealing some of your thunder, Taylor, but thank you, Sean, as a speaker in this event and having been in your shoes, you did a phenomenal job. Great cadence, great tone. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
it.
then now I'll turn it over to Taylor. Sorry, and you're welcome.
Yes, second that. Absolutely. This was amazing. It was so great to have you all here so early in the morning on the other side of things. And it really made my Friday fantastic. Thank you to Outplay for sponsoring. Thank you to our speakers, to our moderator, and to the folks who all attended today. We hope to see you at an event soon and have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everyone.
Namaste.